I am Shelley Mosier. I am the Associate Director for Research Administration in Post Award, and presenting with me today too is the Associate Director for Pre-Award, Denise Wheatley.
Good morning. So just a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. So we're going to do an introduction to ORI. We're going to look at a project life cycle, so a grant contract project life cycle, a budget process, the WMU approval process, grant management, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So this is part of our office. Everybody doesn't know everyone that's in our office and all the services that we provide. So we wanted to at least touch on them. So we do have a research development administrator. Her name is Christine. And she helps with searching for funding opportunities. She does our limited submissions. She does networking sessions, and she can coordinate teams. If you need someone from another discipline that you're looking for to be part of your grant, she can help with that. She helps with the FRACA. Joanne is our coordinator for data research. So she does a lot of the internals, so the SFSA, the PP&E for travel, all of those things. Pre-award is myself and my team, which I'll introduce shortly. And we help with reading RFPs, developing budgets, interpreting all the guidelines, the different programs that you have to know to submit the grants, and just navigating all of those, the deadlines, internal approvals, all that stuff. Steve Weber does contracts, among many other things. But if you have contracts or non-disclosure agreements or other things that he has listed here, he is the one that you would be able to reach out to. So Betty is our Senior Director of Research. She's not here today, but she is over both our teams. So I'm going to introduce Courtney, if you can stand, please. She's one of our research officers. Julie Boylan and Jamie Baker. And we just hired someone new, so that will be coming out as an announcement shortly.
And the award management side is the post-award team. We handle once the award has been received, and we review all the terms and conditions. We set up your fund and cost center. We do all the prior approvals, so if you need a no-cost extension, a budget revision, the post-award team handles that, and then all the invoicing and financial reports that are required, we process those as well. We also have a technology and innovation person, David Johnson. He deals with the intellectual property and disclosures. And then our compliance side is Julia Mays. She is over the IRB and animal control. And Jim Center handles the export control. And he also handles biosafety and radiation. And the post-award team, Betty is also, as Denise mentioned, Betty is over our post-award team as well. Joy Mills is unable to be here today, so, but we have Jen Rice in the back. And Chris Scheller has joined our team. She was with our team previously and is back, so we're glad to have her back. And then Anna Council.
This is just kind of a little visual of the project life cycle. So as a PI, you would generate some ideas. Most of you have thoughts, maybe not just one area you're interested in research, but maybe a couple. And you kind of have a thought of what you want to do. So you need to find funding opportunities, and then you come in and contact your research officer. And we will look to see, does Western qualify? Do you as an individual qualify for this specific opportunity? And if you do, the next step is for the PI to work on their budget and their budget justification. So the budget justification is also called the budget narrative, and what this is sort of like the story of the budget. So if you had let's say, a marketing cost in your budget, the narrative would explain what exactly you're spending that money on. So that's what the budget narrative is. And once they have those pieces, the PI will work with the RO to get that submitted internally for approval and get it routed. And then once all of those pieces are together, we submit the proposal. Where'd you go?
And once your proposal is funded, then you would work with the post-award side. And as I mentioned earlier, we would set up your account for you, provide your funding cost center. We work with you to manage the project during the whole life cycle, from the beginning to the end, budget revisions, no cost extensions, possibly change of scope during the project. We work with you on your reports. We do our best, if we know when the reports are due, to send out notifications to let you know when reports are coming due. We work with you on the financial side with your budget and assisting your department with processing all of the various forms. And then when your project is coming to an end, we work with you on closeout, whether it's things that need to be taken care of here at Western or with your program officer at the sponsoring agency.
So just another visual, we review the RFP with you as a PI, work on the budget and the budget justification. Usually those are a piece that take a lot of time. The other part would be the PI actually writing all the different documents that they have to submit. And then we get it routed. And we'll talk about our internal routing system in a little bit. So when we put items in the budget, what you want to look for and think about is, are they reasonable, allowable, and allocable? So would a reasonable person see that that cost makes sense for this award? Does it advance the scope of work and what you're trying to do with this grant? Every award will often have, well, let's just say every, most have terms and conditions. So we need to follow those. As far as budgeting guidelines, there's the uniform guidance and WMU institutional policies and procedures that we need to make sure we're following. Again, allocable is, can this be traced back to a cost for this project that we are using to work towards the project objectives? So just some of the items that you'd see in a budget, personnel, consultants, travel, equipment, supplies, those types of things. So we're going to look at direct costs versus F&A. And we'll talk about direct costs first, and then I'll touch on F&A, which is facilities and administration. Also used to be called indirect costs. So some of you may be more familiar with that term. So direct costs in a budget, if you're looking at a budget on paper setting it up, you're going to have all your direct costs and then at the F&A at the bottom and then your total cost. So that's kind of visually what a budget would look like. But direct costs, again, are something that can be identified with a particular program, project, activity that you're doing related to your scope of work and what you're trying to accomplish with your grant. So some examples of direct costs, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into this. Printing evaluations to use with the population you're working with, lab supplies to carry out the science that you're doing, conference fees that you're attending specifically to disseminate your research that you've done during this time of the grant, or travel to a conference to learn. So normally what we do first in the budget is personnel and fringe. So senior personnel, sometimes there's key personnel, any of the other personnel, their work has to be attributable to this grant that they're working on. So for staff and faculty, we use their base institutional salary to figure a % of time and amount of money that they are going to work on this grant. For grad assistants, there is, from the grad college, rate assignments that come out every year. And we have a budget template on our website. Your RO, your research officer, can also send that to you. but we update that yearly with new fringe rates, new tuition rates, new rates for the grad students, our positions, that type of thing. There are some guidelines for undergrad students and student employees, and that's at Campus and Student Employment Services website. And fringe benefits, we use whatever is in effect during the time we're doing that budget to start. And fringe rates can be just FICA, it could be retirement, it could be retirement and healthcare, and lots of different things. So there's different rates depending on what type of fringe goes with the position that you're putting in the grant. So for travel, when you put travel in your budget, we want you to think about all the things that you need. And a lot of times you don't, and that's why our ROs are here to help. So ground transportation, if you're flying, do you need taxis back and forth? Are you driving? You're going to have mileage. Do you need an airline ticket? Parking costs at the airport, or if you go to Chicago or Detroit, you're usually paying to park in the ramp at the hotel, right? Food, accommodations, luggage. So for federal grants, the accommodations, so like the hotel fees and per diem, which is your food, we follow the General Services Administration, the GSA, and that is, the link is here. So that will tell you each city has an assigned rate, and oftentimes it varies by month for like their overnight hotel rate, which honestly, those are usually lower than what it actually costs. So that's okay. But we do use the per diem that they put out there. So with per diem, I just want to mention this because it's something that a lot of people struggle with. So when you're traveling, for example, you're traveling for 4 days. Monday is the day you're going there. Your per diem would be 75% of the full cost of meals. Tuesday and Wednesday, you're there for the whole day, so you're getting 100% of the per diem of those meals. And Thursday is your 4th day where you're coming home, and you can claim 75% of the per diem. And they actually have those rates broke out in the GSA and figured for you. You just go in by year and you put in the city that you're going to. Do you want to do the other two?
So then once you've received your grant and you're now traveling, you would do the WMU travel authorization through the PeopleSoft self-service. And the only time those travel authorizations would be routed to grants and contracts is if you're traveling internationally. You would have 2 additional approvals required, and that is grants and contracts, and then the export control. Jim Center would reach out to you and ask you various questions about what you plan to do when you're over there, what you're bringing with you, and if you're planning to bring anything back with you as well. And then once you return from your travel, you will submit your travel voucher. And with that, if you are traveling internationally, just make sure that you're filling out the log for the international to show the exchange rate. So with the international log, make sure you have that completed. But if it's just domestic travel, you'll fill out the travel expense voucher, make sure you have all your various receipts. These are verified with accounts payable. If there's any questions, they would get back with you. But with your per diem on the travel expense voucher, you don't have to turn in all your receipts for meals. Only if you are having a meal with various others would you need to have your actual receipt for the meals.
Okay, another line item in the budget is supplies. So supplies are something that are less than $5,000. We'll talk about over $5,000 in a minute. Supplies must be used for, and again, easily assigned to the project. And in general, it's not office supplies. So just your general pens, paper, printers, those types of things are not supplies. They would fall under the facilities and administration costs, which means the money that's coming back from the F&A is what you should be using to cover those costs, not putting them as supplies in the budget. For Pro Card purchases, Shelley can add if she has anything else, but you can reallocate those to a grant within the Pro Card statement period. And if after the statement period ends, then you have to do a cost transfer form or JES to move those costs. Okay, so equipment is something that's $5,000 or more. So it's tangible personal property, and it also includes information technology systems that have a useful life of a year or more, and their unit acquisition cost is $5,000 or more. For federal grants, when you're purchasing equipment, please look at Logistical Services website from WMU to get your requirements that you need. And equipment is there's a few items that we don't charge F&A on, and that's from the federal government. Equipment is one of them.
When you are purchasing equipment, you do have to fill out the purchase requisition. That does get routed to our office, and especially if you need to do the sole source, make sure that you're filling that out at the time you're doing the purchase requisition, and you can submit them together. If you do happen to send it to purchasing before getting our approval, they usually will catch that and send it back and ask that you work with grants and contracts to get that approval.
Okay, participant support. Not every funder has this category, some do, but participant support, those are funds that are not able to be moved without permission from us and the sponsor. And they're direct costs for items such as stipends or subsistence allowances, travel, someone's coming to get a training and you're going to pay for their travel and hotel, registration fees paid on or behalf of participants or trainees in connection to whatever conference or training you're doing on the grants. So participants are people who are receiving the service, not someone who is a speaker or providing the training. WMU employees cannot be participants on our own grants. And these are also not research subjects. So that's something a lot of people don't realize, is that if you have research subjects in your grant, if you're paying them incentives, for saying, hey, here's $25 for taking a half hour to do this survey for me, those go under other direct costs, which we are going to look at too. But that is not participant support. And again, participant support is something that we do not charge F&A on either. So again, a couple more examples. A generic voucher, travel, you'd have to submit the authorization and the voucher, meals. So you'd have to back up what you were spending this money on for the participants. So the last kind of line item in our budget is other direct costs, which covers pretty much everything else. So if you have collaborators, so subawards, contractors, consultants, tuition for students would go under this line item. And again, tuition rates are issued by Western, so we follow those. We just talked about the incentives go under here. If you have publication costs, computer costs, marketing costs, there are other things, but this is kind of some of the most popular ones that we see often under other direct costs. So for subawards, sometimes there's confusion and it can be hard to determine, is this a vendor, a contractor, or a subaward? So if it's a subaward, you can see the list of what qualifications this subaward needs to meet. So they have to be very involved in the programmatic decisions and programming of the grant. Basically, you couldn't meet your objectives and scope of work if this subaward was not also working on the grant. Their personnel have a key role in our submission. And they may seek to publish results and put those out publicly after the grant. So there's a couple more, but that's kind of the biggest ones to look for when you're looking at a subaward. If you do have a subaward, your research officer, prior to submitting the grant, will find out who that is, and we need to send paperwork for them to sign. So if you have a subaward in your budget, we also need their budget justification and their budget actual budget and scope of work, resume, a couple other things. But there's also a subrecipient form that must be signed by someone at the sub-agency before we submit the grant. So that is something that you would get from your research officer.
Once your grant is awarded and we provide the subcontract to the subaward, subcontracts are handled by Steve Weber, who is our contract administrator. Your subs will begin to obviously do the work with you and submit invoices. Those invoices we have coming to our office. When those invoices come in, you will receive an email from our office. It will go to the PI and the administrative assistant in the department who's working on the grant to ask that they review the invoice, make sure that there is an invoice review checklist for the PI, and it more or less is asking, are they doing the work that they're supposed to be doing? Are their expenses coincide with the work that they've actually done? If they didn't travel and they're submitting travel, something to question with them. And then, have they completed any reports that are required? Once you can sign off on that, you would send that to the administrative assistant in the department. They would process that invoice review form with the invoice with a voucher. The voucher with all those documentations come back to our office, and we do a final check and review it, and if we're okay to sign off on it, then we send it on to accounts payable for you. One thing to note, subs, their expenditures for F&A charging, we do the first $25,000 of every sub, and it doesn't matter if they spend that first $25,000 in the first year, first month, or even if it takes them 2 years, the first $25,000 you would charge against the $48.25, and then anything over the $25,000 you would put against the $48.16.
So facilities and administration. So what this is it's costs for common objectives that we can't readily identify a specific cost for. So for example, office chairs, staplers, your whole ORI team. So from pre and post to contracts to Julia Mays, who does HSIRB and compliance work. And then it's also covering infrastructure and operational costs. So all those things such as janitorial work in the building, people in payroll who are issuing checks for people on your grant, administrative assistants who do work on the grant. So it's set to cover all of those things. So this is kind of hard to read, but it's a visual to show you that lab is the direct cost. They are using that lab and those supplies to do the work of the grant. Everything on the other side, which is this building, is F&A costs. So they're saying lights and janitorial, utilities, all of those things. So it's just to try to help you visualize what you're actually paying for with the F&A. So how does it get distributed? This is another question that we get a lot. This is determined by the university. Our office has nothing to do with how this is split up. So currently, a PI would get 10% of the F&A. So if you have this pot of F&A that you're getting back, it is based on expenditures. So if you don't spend the money in your grant, you're not going to get all of that F&A back because it's directly tied to what you are expending. So PIs and co-PIs are 10% of that pot of money. 10% goes to the department, 70% to the colleges, and ORI gets 10% of that. So to try to visualize, we don't have our 10% of ORI at 5,100 on here. But, so here we have a PI and a co-PI. Their 10% is 5,100. They have chosen to split that up, that 5,100 up, 75% for the PI, 25% for the co-PI. So that's kind of how that would look. Same thing with their departments. There's that 5,100 that they would get. Departments decided they would split that evenly. So 50-50. And you can see the next one, 60-40 with the colleges. We do not determine any of these like lower splits, right? Like, so if it's you're a PI and you have a couple co-PIs, as long as it makes 100 on our internal Caillou system, we don't get involved in, 10 here, 20 here. Well, this is coming to my college, but I want it to go, a portion to go to that college. That can be done, but that's on your end in your offices. It's not something we do at ORI. So just a couple things to remember. At Western, so internally, our policy is if you change your budget more than 10%, you need to do a prior approval form and a budget revision form, and those will need to be signed and routed through our office, signed by your chair, possibly signed by your dean, depending on what you're doing. Participant support, which we touched on, cannot be modified. So that's not an area that you can say, oh, well, I budgeted for 100 participants, only 60 came, so I have this extra money and I'm going to move it out. You can't do that without our approval and the sponsor approval. Total direct costs. So when I said we have that budget where we have personnel and salary and equipment and travel, all of that added up is our total direct costs. If you have total direct costs, you're applying F&A to all of that. Modified total direct cost, there are certain things that cannot be, that you can't charge F&A on. So this is the list. We can't charge F&A on tuition, scholarships, fellowships. As Shelley mentioned, once a subaward hits $25,000 and we charged F&A on that $25,000, we can't charge F&A on any more of the funds that they're receiving. If you do capital equipment, if you have to rent a space, patient care charges, participant support costs, those cannot have F&A figured on them. WMU's policy is that full F&A costs will be recovered on every proposal to the extent allowed by the sponsor. So sometimes grants have cost share, or they might refer to it as match. And so cost share is part of the project that basically WMU is bearing those costs instead of the sponsor. So normally the cost share is what we'd say in kind. So it may be time and the salary and fringe, which is time of a faculty that's on the grant, that they're going to use that portion for cost share. If it's required, it's called mandatory cost share. And when a grant or funder requires it, that's what it's called, mandatory cost share, and we have to comply with that in our submission. On the other side of that is voluntary cost share, which means you don't have to do it, but you're wanting to. So we discourage that because cost share does have an administrative burden for our office and the administrative assistants in the offices to track all of those pieces of the cost share so we can report them. And we want to have that because if we don't, we could have audit findings when we're pulled for audit. So if you're looking at, well, actually, let me go back. So we are not likely to approve voluntary cost share in general, but you talk to your RO if there's a reason you think you need it, and they will counsel you in how to move forward. So the very first step, if you want cost share, is you should go to your chair or your unit director and talk to them about the fact that you have this grant you're interested in and it requires cost share, and this is kind of what you were thinking, and would they approve that? So our internal approval process is called CAIUS, and anything that you submit from a sponsor that is having WMU personnel or property on it, you need to have that internal approval. So it kind of keeps that record for us of the budget and the cost share, and it's going to be routed for approval by the PI, the chair, the dean, and then it comes back to our office for the final approval. And the reason I say that you should talk to your chair or unit director when you have cost share, you should also do that just when you're thinking about a budget, right? Because when you submit, not just a budget, but a grant application, when you submit this form in CAIUS, it's going to go to them anyways, and you don't want them to be surprised. And we have had a couple times where grants have been delayed or not submitted because the chair or whoever was not aware of this cost share. So we just want them to know, even on a regular grant, if you're budgeting a buyout of a class for fall and spring, you want your chair to know, and you want to know that it's okay and they can cover it and that type of thing. So we just urge you to talk to them early in the process. So as I said, Cayuse is the system that we use. The link is here. When you go into that, there's just some tabs. The PI is the one who will do this. And it'll ask you general questions. So do you have, do you have HSIRB? So are there compliance issues? Is there going to be foreign involvement? So then we know we have to pay attention to export control. What's the budget? What's the justification look like? And as the pre-award team, we're reading the solicitation and looking at all of the requirements and making sure that your budget and everything you have meets that. So that's the purpose of that. And at this link, there is like a short 5-minute video that explains how to use it if someone has not used it before. But again, your RO can help you with this if you have questions.
As we talked earlier, personnel is a big part of your budget, and I'll briefly go through some of the different personnel that you may have budgeted, and then how, once it's awarded, what you would process to either hire the individuals or charge their time to the grant. So oftentimes faculty are on their grants for release time or buyout, and those are kind of the same terms. Obviously release is their release from a class, and buyout is their department is not having to pay for that salary for that faculty because they were released from their course. That time is charged then to the grant. The form that you would fill out for that is the planned effort form. Majority of the time this is academic year faculty, so it would be any time during the academic year. No additional pay is allowed on grants during the academic year, so it is going to be buyout release time, so you would be using the planned effort form. And then in the summer, if faculty are budgeted, it's usually summer pay. They can get the additional pay in the summer. So you have a summer salary worksheet. And what the summer salary worksheet is it just sums up all of faculty time during the summer. Federal government does limit your time during the summer. Because if you put through 100% of your time during the summer, you're pretty much saying you are not doing anything else but working on those grants or teaching the class. So that means no vacation time, no sick time, no working on proposals for the next year. And that very seldom happens. We know faculty are very busy, so they are doing other things other than just their classes and just that grant. So this sums up their time so that it shows all their time during the summer, and we can verify that they are not going over the 100%. Or Western's policy is 95%, so if you do go over the 95%, you do have to get your chair, dean, and ORI VP approval. Another position on grants could be your research staff, and this is senior research associates, postdocs, emeritus research faculty. Our positions are all the descriptions of what they are and what their benefits are all on HR's website. But these do require, to get somebody hired, you do a position authorization. Just to let you know too, we are planning, at the end you'll see, we are planning to do trainings throughout the academic year to break down many of these, spend a lot more time on this information, but don't hesitate if you do have questions. But we will be breaking these out a lot more during the academic year. Another maybe department administrative time. This is very rare, as Denise discussed earlier. Oftentimes this is part of our F&A, but there are times when it's a major project and you need that administrative assistant on your project specifically. And the limit is if the person is going to be spending at least 0.15 FTE of their time or more. So if they will be for that one specific project, oftentimes at the proposal stage, you can put that in. That is another requirement as well to allow an administrative time on a project is it has to have sponsor approval. So not only does it have to meet the 0.15 FTE, it also has to have sponsor approval. But if that were the case, you would also do a buyout form, the planned effort, because you're buying out the administrative person's time from the department and now charging it onto the grant. Graduate assistants, as we've kind of spoken a little bit before, those are done through the PeopleSoft HR, and then the tuition is done through the Banner workflow. And then the other part too is having hourly students. Obviously, if it's still a graduate assistant and you don't plan on giving them an assistantship, you would hire them as an hourly student, and those are done through PeopleSoft HR. Obviously, for graduate assistants and hourly students, there might be more requirements within your own department college. You'll obviously want to follow those, but as far as routing them through our office, these are the forms and processes that you would use. So you've gotten notification that you're expecting to get your award and you want to get started. It's important that you do get started, and we want to be able to assist you with that. So we have a pre-award account, or it's oftentimes referred to as a backstop form. This allows the setup of an account so you can get started, whether you need to start hiring people, you have a travel conference that you need to attend, you have supplies you need to purchase. And what this form does is it allows you to indicate what you need to get started before the award gets here, and for the department to sign off, the college to sign off on an account. In case you do not get the award, there has to be somebody who can cover these expenses that you plan to do before the official award is here in the office. Consultants, that is another piece that is often on your projects, and if it is for an individual, you would do the independent contract form, and depending on where your funding is coming from, if it's for federal, you would also have to include the Exhibit B, and if it's NSF, you would include the Exhibit C. The first page of the independent contract form is various questions. Obviously, this will help determine if the individual you'll be working with would actually qualify to be an independent contract. Business services is the department that you would work with as well. It's always best to reach out to them early, and if you're just getting your award, maybe reaching out to them to say, I have this person I want to hire, this is what they'll be doing. They have been looking more closely at the work that people are doing, and many are becoming temp employees because of the relationship with the university. So it's best to reach out to business services early so you can work with them. Journal entries. These are for when a charge was not done originally on a grant, or the charge was accidentally charged to the grant and you now need to move it off. The times when you need cost transfer forms for payroll, if in eCert the time period, let's say right now we're completing summer right now, and it hasn't been confirmed, if you're transferring payroll charges onto a grant for summer, you can still do that without a cost transfer form because the confirmation period has not ended. If it was for spring or last fall and you need to transfer somebody's time and it's already been confirmed in eCert, you do need to fill out a cost transfer form. For non-payroll expenditures, if the charge is, it's on the Pro Card and you didn't get a chance to reallocate it within the month, but that month is still technically open, you can do the transfer, no cost transfer required. Once that month has closed, you would have to do a cost transfer form to move that expenditure. Anytime you're moving expenses off from a grant, you do not need a cost transfer form. So if a payroll charge was accidentally charged and you need to move it off, or a pro card was accidentally charged and you need to move it off, you do not need to do a cost transfer form. So monitoring your project expenditures, Western's system is Glow, and it is now available in PeopleSoft HR. In order to get access to Glow, you would need to reach out to accounting services and they would get you access to it, but it allows you to monitor your projects. And whether you're in the department assisting with the administration of grants or you're a PI, you do have access and can monitor Glow. We will have a training that is one of those that we will break out this academic year to give you more specifics, but there is a very brief, it's like 7 minutes on our website of just to be able to go into Glow and determine what your balance is on Glow. But for grant funds, we are 25 through 30, 25 being straight from the federal government. 26 is state funding, 27 is your local government, 28s are foundations, and 29s are others. Now it is possible 26, 27, 28, and 29 could be federal flow through, but who we're receiving our funds from is one of those agencies, but they may have gotten their funds from the federal government. We still have to treat those as federal funds, even though they're flowing through another agency. And then the Fund 30 is for the cost share. So if you have cost share on your grant, the Fund 30 will have the same cost center as, let's say, your main fund, which is a 25 or a 29. So your 30 will match the same cost center as your main funding. Just a reminder there, when you are doing journal entries, you need to make sure you're providing all the documentation for it. It helps us in determining if the cost is allowable on the grant. So the fiscal year had ended, we just did roll forwards. If we still hadn't done roll forwards, grant accounts are grant to date. So anytime you look at Glow, you will always see your grant to date information. It won't be for just Western's fiscal year. It'll be, so if your project started 2 years ago and you're looking at it today, you're looking at the history of the 2 years plus the couple months that are in this new fiscal year. So you always, if you're not choosing the fiscal year on Glow, you want to choose carry forwards. And anytime, like a couple weeks ago when roll forwards had not taken place, you would always want to choose the carry forwards from the prior year, and you can go through the current month that you're in and you'll still get your grant to date information. Anytime you want to see just your grant year, the best way to look at it is detail, but it could potentially be a lot of information. So just to keep in mind when you're looking at Glow, if you choose fiscal year, you're going to get all years combined. We do break out on Glow different subtotals. So if you're looking at a Glow account, the top subtotal is going to be any revenue. Obviously, we do all the billings. You don't have to necessarily pay attention to the revenue side of it, but that's all the revenue that we've received in. And then the next subtotal is your F&A, if you have F&A on your project. And then the last amount is your direct costs. eCert, I mentioned a little bit earlier. So eCert is our electronic system that we use for payroll confirmation. It is project-based. So it is anybody who is paid on your grant for the eCert period. We have 3 eCert periods, which are summer, fall, and spring. It is important to look on our website at the eCert periods, what payroll periods are covered by those eCert periods, because they are a little bit different, because like fall and spring, there's pay periods that overlap. And then biweekly is slightly off from semi-monthly. So just to pay attention to that eCert calendar and what pay periods are in those periods. So the process each time then is pre-review, which is usually an administrative person within your department who is helping to monitor the grant, would do the pre-review, and they have 2 weeks. An initial email goes out to them to let them know pre-review is now open, and then our office sends out reminders periodically to let you know the pre-review has not been completed. If you do not complete the pre-review, then the PI does not get access to their statement. So it's important that you do the pre-review before it opens for confirmation for the PIs. Obviously, we do not want you doing your pre-review to say it's been pre-reviewed if you find any problems. So if somebody's not showing up, there's somebody on there that should not be on there, it's best to get those corrections made before it gets to the PI for review. So if you have pre-reviewed, then after those 2 weeks, an email will be sent to the PI to let them know confirmation has opened. The PIs will get 3 weeks to confirm, and obviously there's always the potential that the administrative assistant didn't know that a student wasn't supposed to be paid on your grant. So we do ask the PIs also to do a thorough review of their projects and make sure that everybody that is on that statement should be on there, and that everything looks accurate to the best of your knowledge. If that is true, then you can confirm your statement, and periodically the system will send out reminders each week, and then the day before it's due, another reminder will go out to let PIs know that the statement has not been confirmed yet. Cost share, Denise touched on that a little bit. If the grant only has cost share for faculty, we oftentimes do not set up that Fund 30, because really what we're doing for that is the planned effort form, and on the planned effort form there's a box for cost share, so we're just kind of tracking it internally via forms. If there is cost share that is more than just faculty time, you're hiring students, you're purchasing supplies, equipment, various others, we will set up a Fund 30 so that you can charge those expenditures to that Fund 30. Post-award responsibilities. We created a chart out there on our website, the link is there at the top, to kind of go through the common expenditures, common procedures that happen once you receive an award. It has what the department and PI would handle, and then what grants and contracts will handle. This is one of the sessions we'll be doing this academic year to break it out a little bit more, but this is a very helpful chart to give you an idea as these things come up, especially when you get a grant for the first time, what is being handled on the department side, and then what is being handled on the grants and contracts side. We also have a list of frequently asked questions. We obviously, if you feel that we could add to this, something that comes up oftentimes that you would like to see on there, please don't hesitate to let us know. We're more than willing to add to this, but these are the things that we see the most. And the link is there on the top as well. We are doing remote office location times again. We did this before COVID, and we are getting back to doing it again. These are the buildings that we will be in and the rooms we are in. We plan to post outside the rooms kind of a schedule. Obviously that can change if somebody gets ill or has other responsibilities at that time, but pre and post award plan to be out there in the buildings. If we are not in your building and you would like us to be, please reach out. You know, we're more than willing to see what we can do to be available for you for questions and assist you. And as I mentioned, we will be doing monthly trainings. Each month then we'll pick a topic. We plan to do these kind of as a lunch and learn. keeping them virtual so people have the ability to attend. And we will record those, and I think I didn't mention, we are recording this as well, so if you know somebody who wasn't able to be here today, it will be available on our website in a couple weeks, so that people, or if you need to refer back to it, it'll also be available. But we are going to do these trainings to kind of break down. I mean, we did a high overview today. We plan to break down a lot more. As I mentioned, they will be recorded, so if you do happen to miss them, they will be available later for listening. All right, any questions for us?
Will the slides be available on your website?
Yes, yep.
Is there an easy research tutorial that we can share
Yep.
with faculty?
Yep, so there are a couple videos out on our website. There is a PI one, like what they see when they go in there, what they will see when they click on their project, and what they need to do to confirm it. So it's on our eCert page, but yes, there are short videos of what they need to do when they get into eCert. Yes?
I don't know if this is necessary for this, but talking of budget, I know you said we use the fringe rate as like when we apply. How does that apply for mileage?
So mileage, as far as, so you would use the mileage rate when you're doing the proposal at the time. Obviously, if you do the mileage rate, let's say it's at 50% when you're doing it, and by the time you're actually charging it, it's 55%. It is best, obviously, if you have money in your budget to cover it, to use the required rate, the GSA rate. But obviously, if your funds are not available, you have a very tight budget, you can limit it, but you need to definitely let your people know who are traveling that they are not going to be able to get full reimbursement. Sometimes you can use your F&A, it might be available, but obviously there are those times if it significantly goes up that if your budgets are tight that you might not be able to use that new rate if it's significantly higher. Yes? Yep.
Is the Fund 30 the same as the wrap account?
No. So your wrap account is where your F&A distribution every year goes to. So that is your personal F&A account as a PI. The Fund 30 is if there's cost share required on your grant, and we are tracking it through that Fund 30.
So the Fund 30 is not accessible to faculty?
You can charge your expenditures there, yes, if your grant requires the cost share. Because usually that,
I was going to say, because you have to fund it. Yeah.
yep,
Fund cost one by one?
sorry, say that again?
I was like, normally I would just charge the grant.
Yep.
I don't charge Fund 30 because I didn't know it existed.
Right, so oftentimes there is not a Fund 30 because there isn't cost share required on projects. This is only if the sponsor requires the cost share, and we've put it in the budget that Western is going to contribute a portion of the funds to the project. Yes?
I have a question related to paying an invoice.
Okay.
So we have a subcontractor, grants has signed the purchase rec, the blanket PO has been issued. Now it's time to pay that subcontractor. I think I heard you say grants wants to sign that invoice.
So you're talking about two different things. Subcontractors don't go on purchase requisition. Subcontractors go through our office and their subawards. What you're referring to is like a contractor, a vendor contractor. Yep, and those don't necessarily go through our office for the invoice review. If you've done the purchase requisition, as long as the purchase requisition was approved by us on the grant, then you can go ahead and submit any invoices that come through. Yep. Yes.
You mentioned SRM. I'm sorry to bring it up, but is grants and contracts involved with what our SRM budget is? Or, I
F&A?
So it is a discussion. So the SRM F&A distribution is handled through the budget office, but it is also, from our understanding, it is something that, especially those heavily involved in research, as well as the VP for research, that discussions can be made about the F&A distribution. This was just the distribution that was decided at the time we went forward with SRM.
Because I noticed ours did not change this year. We had a short last year, so I was curious, is it going to change every year based on some calculation or assumption, as you're saying? Or if we feel it needs to be changed, should we be kind of taking the budget?
So do you mean changed as in the 70% that colleges get,
No, not about the distribution, but
how it's used?
number on the SRM account.
Budget, I would talk with the budget office. Yep, yep. That's fine, go right ahead.
One was about backstops, so you mentioned that.
Yep.
And you know our history, College of Aviation, we do a lot of cost share.
Yep,
We
yep.
have a lot of extensions, and we're the sub-award. So I kind of had questions about, is there more information if you're the sub-award? But two, on the backstop, if there's a no-cost extension, do we need a sub-award? 'Cause they've been emailing us and saying, hey, we get to continue, but
Okay.
I don't think there's any money involved, but we haven't done a backstop.
Okay, so if we are a sub-award, instead of us providing the sub-award, we are actually the sub-award. So kind of that flow-through situation where maybe it's coming from the federal government, but the agency that's giving it to us is U of M. If they are saying that they are going to provide a no-cost extension and our sub-award has not been amended yet, we would want to do the backstop because of the fact that, as far as our records show, the sub-award has ended or soon will be ending. And until we get that amended contract from U of M, we can't move forward. We can't approve any expenditures. So yes, if you want to be able to move forward, I would recommend a backstop. Is that what you?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might be a no-cost extension.
Yep, even in a no-cost extension situation, even though you're not getting new monies, you still have funds that are left over. And according to our sub-award that we got from U of M, let's say it ended 9/30 and it's now today, and somebody needs to purchase something or have a faculty buyout or something, you definitely want to be able to do that backstop in order to continue working on the project while we wait for that no-cost extension to be signed. Yep. Yes?
Yeah, any funds we get outside MC should go through grants and contracts, correct?
I wouldn't say any funds that are received that are external would come through us. There are certain funds that go through the development office that might be a gift or an endowment. It is great if you reach out to Denise or anyone on her team to indicate if you plan to receive funds. Oftentimes we look at certain criteria and we can help you determine if those funds really ORI. Any other questions? All right, well, we definitely appreciate you coming out. Hopefully you got to meet people you haven't either ever seen or work with virtually a lot. So we appreciate you coming out. Enjoy any more food and beverages, and we appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and we continue to work with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.